Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new show, Kenny and Charlie Top Two, the top two stories of the day, brought to you by JEGS, the leader in high performance aftermarket car parts. Remember to go to jegs.com, and they have told me they have a lot of truck parts, Jeep parts to fix your hot rods up. Charlie Marlowe, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Kenny. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm excited to do the Kenny and Charlie top two stories. So, something that really came up on our radar, Charlie, was when Chase Elliott just got done winning Texas, uh, we thought, oh, he's finally back. We need him. Uh, when you and I interviewed Ben Kennedy, who runs NASCAR, he told us that when Chase Elliott wins, we see a big tick up. But you and I have noticed that when Chase wins, it's really the old people, his dad's fans, Bill Elliott's fans. What is your take on the 40 to 60-year-old people really excited that Chase Elliott wins?
So that's very interesting. I would also think there's some maybe some young ladies. It seems like the young ladies also really like Chase Elliott. But I do think, the older generation of NASCAR fans, and I've really seen this through your channel and the comments and all that. And I would agree. I'm 41 years old, but there was something different. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Just the cars, the color schemes, the names, the nicknames, the fights. There's just something about that throwback era of NASCAR. It does feel a little too corporate these days. Some of these young drivers are these young, good-looking kids, and a lot of them have a lot of money. I think a lot of people like the folks like your family back in the day who built the cars. They were underneath the cars. I just think that classic NASCAR 70s, 80s, 90s, it brings a lot of people from your age group back to their youth. We all love our youth. I love music from the 90s because I cared about music,
Tears for
Nirvana.
Fears,
Right. I don't care about
every
music now. Yeah, so I think
mm,
I think everybody loves their youth and they think it was better back then. And I think with NASCAR, it's fair to say it was. It seemed more fun back then.
and not to mention that you and I have brought up lately is that and everybody quit battling me finally on our Kenny conversations or our Kenny Wallace shows. We've said that officially, finally, Chase Elliott is the last of the bloodline of the greats. Now, listen, respond right here, everybody. But Charlie, I mean, I know Ryan Blaney has won the championship, and I love his dad, Dave. And his dad, Dave, was great, but he was never a NASCAR great. He didn't win any races. I didn't win any races. So me and Dave Blaney are kind of the same. I believe Chase Elliott is the very last of the great bloodline from his dad. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think it's funny too. We've talked about this a lot. This current crop of drivers, I love personally Denny Hamlin, Kyle
Yes.
Busch because they're interesting. I didn't really grow up a hardcore NASCAR fan, so I would say now I'm hardcore with you obviously, but I'm more of a casual, so I need a little more of the extra to probably get into it. We've talked about how William Byron, Ryan Blaney, great guys, great drivers, but a little milk toast. And
Oh,
right,
boring.
and it's like to me it's funny because I think Chase is kind of like that too, but people love him. It's almost like Chase is so polite. He's so respectful and he also appreciates the history of NASCAR, which I think people love. You saw him do the Polish victory lap talking about Alan Kulwicki, and I think people love that, especially your
I
generation of
loved it.
NASCAR fans. They love when people appreciate the history. And Chase Elliott, for the last 3 years when I've really paid more attention to NASCAR, he's always so respectful of the history of the sport.
So Kenny and Charlie, top two. Now it's Danica Patrick, who's we're going to talk about. Danica Patrick. She reminds me a lot of great racers. They either love them or they hate them. And I've seen a lot of. I've taken a lot of polls lately. And it seems like it's always 70-30. Uh, We had Danica Patrick on Kenny Conversation. She literally blew away. I mean, she's up to 85,000 views, and that was an hour, 20-minute show. So either people come on because they hate her, which is a very strong word. I don't like the word hate. She's over 85,000 views in no time. So, what is your take? Why is Danica Patrick so polarizing?
It's a great question. I just think anytime, I don't want to say she was the first, but she was kind of one of the first big time women drivers, obviously IndyCar, then NASCAR. She's basically the same age as me. I remember interviewing her years ago around Michigan International Speedway when she was in IndyCar. Look, I think whenever you're different, you're going to have people who are celebrating you, other people who are hating on you a little bit. I think there's also political ramifications to that, especially now. You can tell on her podcast, like she likes to get into these topics.
She
And you
likes
discuss this.
controversy.
And look, let's be real. Don't we all? Isn't that what's interesting about just content in general? I mean, she said some controversial things on your show, obviously about suing Andretti. She made some comments about Logano and Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin. But look, that's how she felt, and that's interesting. I think people want authentic folks, and I think ever since Danica started doing the podcast, like she understands this. This is interesting. This is what people want. You don't want to listen to a 90-minute podcast and it's boring. I mean, at least there should be two or three. Wow, man, did you hear what she said? And I feel like she gets that. She's interviewing Jordan Peterson and Tucker Carlson. That's kind of the world we live in. People want interesting, authentic topics, and I think she brings that.
And Charlie, I think she's a throwback from the past. She reminds me of my brother Rusty Wallace. Rusty's calmed down a lot now. He just wants to chill out. But my God, my brother Rusty, he'd say anything. He was so controversial. And now, I can't. I talked to Jeff Gordon. I can't get him to get William Byron to talk. I'm like, Jeff, William Byron he's our guy. He's winning all the races. He's got to talk. But people are so afraid now. They're locked down. I think Danica Patrick is a breath of fresh air. She's from the past, even though she's young. What is she, 42, maybe 40? She's 42. But what I like about Danica Patrick is she says what everybody's thinking. And then they all go, oh my God, how dare you say what I'm thinking? You know you can't say that. Uh, but I wish the guys were more like Danica. Uh, but I mean, I'm saying she's polarizing. She says what she thinks, and then people respond. She's successful in everything she does. I agree with you, Charlie. I think that she's going places that everybody's afraid to go. And listen, all the male chauvinists out there, they're jealous. I don't care if she won a race on gas miles or not. She run third in the Indy 500. She led laps. She won an IndyCar race. And Charlie, let me ask you a question. What kind of men are these that go? She only won on gas mileage. Are these insecure men?
100%. I was about ready to get to that part of it because we're talking about Danica, but again, I go through your comment section all the time. It can be Danica, and it's the same type of comments if it's about Haley Deegan, Natalie Decker, Tony Breidinger. We have her on the podcast that hasn't been released yet, but it's always, oh, she's a woman. The only reason she got the ride is she's a woman. Oh, just because she's a pretty face. And I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong with that, by the way? Hey, you know this. There's a lot of dudes. I mean, there's not a lot of ugly NASCAR drivers, too. Marketing is a huge part of it. There's probably a lot of dude drivers who might have been tied with somebody else to get a ride. And they're like, hey, they're kind of the same. Let's pick the good looking guy. He can sell more product. And what's wrong with looking at a pretty lady? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, there it is, everybody. Kenny and Charlie, top two in 10 minutes. Charlie, let's end like this. There's Coke and Pepsi, but nobody calls it Coke or Pepsi. Is it soda or pop?
All right, I'm more passionate about this topic than Chase Elliott and Danica Patrick combined. All right, I am from Toledo, Ohio. We are a pop city. We're a pop area. We call it pop. We don't call it soda. We don't call it soda pop. We don't call it Coke. But then, so I lived in Toledo first 18 years of my life, go to college in Illinois. I've lived in St. Louis for now, what, 16 years. It's a soda town. This is one thing I will never call it soda. It's always pop. And also, I'm trying to get my kids to call it pop, which is going to be hard because they're growing up. But this is one of those things. I'll put up the pop versus soda map. It's pretty cool
Good.
to look across the country at who calls it pop, who calls it soda, and who calls it Cokes. I'm guessing, did you grow up with it soda?
Charlie, let's end it just like that. For me, it's soda. All right,
Okay.
everybody. Listen, we are in podcast form. Go to iTunes or Spotify, and this is our new show, Kenny and Charlie. Charlie, that was a lot of fun. Thank you, buddy.
Awesome, man. We'll
All
do it a
right.
lot.
We'll do it a lot. All right. See you all next time on Kenny and Charlie Top 2.